This is Southern Cross News with Rachel Williams.
Protesters were out in force today, calling for the end of greyhound racing in Tasmania. They say recommendations from last year's inquiry into the industry have not been implemented, but the government insists it is doing what it can.
The wet weather didn't stop animal welfare activists from having their voices heard.
And we don't really believe in that animals should be exploited in any way, whether or not that's for food or for entertainment.
Their message was clear.
End greyhound racing.
But the government says it's not that simple. After supporting an inquiry into the industry last year and releasing a statement today, it says the 31 recommendations handed down in September have been implemented and action has been taken. But today's protesters argue that's not the case, renewing calls for the industry to be shut down altogether.
It feeds people's gambling habits. It's for the profit of a few people, and it's not okay for those dogs. The dogs still live in kennels not in good condition.
But unless we keep the pressure on them, there's a real concern that once our eyes taken off, that things go back to normal. The status quo in the greyhound industry is the last thing that animal welfare advocates want to see.
The issue will be raised in Parliament this week. Louise Hedger, Southern Cross News.
Hundreds of protesters turned out today in a show of support for refugees living in detention centres. Social activists showing their commitment to the cause, wanting refugees to be allowed to settle in Australia.
I'm really heartened by the people that care in this state. I think we have an incredible number of caring people, and I feel really good that they turned up.
This whole issue of refugees is a humanitarian issue. It has become for too long now a political football issue, and it should be taken out of that arena. You know, we need leaders globally to really get together because we have an absolute crisis.
The rally, Justice for Refugees, was one of many held around the nation to call for the end of mandatory offshore detention. A little boy has saved his family from a house fire in Hobart this morning. After smelling smoke, the 3-year-old woke his sleeping mum and dad. His quick thinking saved the family home from going up in flames. The young hero, a little shy, but happy to refer to himself as the fastest man alive.
The house would be on fire.
I don't know what happened. If my son not see the smoke, no, maybe the fire was more big, you know.
Fire crews managed to bring the fire under control, but are using the incident to remind people of the importance of working smoke alarms. V8 supercar driver Will Davison is in doubt for the next round of the championship following a heavy hit at Symmons Plains yesterday. The Techno Holden driver was caught up in the 12-car carnage which brought the race to a standstill. A series of scans at the Launceston General Hospital overnight revealed Davison could have fractured vertebrae in his lower back. But Davison is in good spirits, tweeting a photo from his bedside to fans today. The next round is at Phillip Island in 2 weeks' time. A 46-year-old man remains in a stable condition at the Royal Hobart Hospital following a mountain bike crash in the state's northeast. The Hobart man was trail bike riding near Wellborough with friends when he crashed attempting a jump. He was treated on the scene for suspected spinal injuries and airlifted to hospital by the Westpac rescue chopper. Derby has dished the dirt for the Enduro World Series, a mud bath for the globe's best bikers who braved Mother Nature just as much as the treacherous trails. The event running like clockwork, with fans giving the Northeast a big tick in the wash-up.
Chains clicking and pedals pounding, these downhillers dived into Derby's wildest trails. These fearless feats for the Enduro World Series, the first time the event has been held in Australia.
Yeah, I went over handlebars on stage 4 and another one on stage 6.
He's one of 300 riders taking part today. Those in the elite bracket are from across the world. Spectators shadowed their runs. Not even broken bones could stop some fans.
Look, I haven't got down yet, but I made it up, so I'll see how we go.
It's box office exposure for the region. Later this year, a special feature on today's event will be telecast to dozens of countries.
The rain here hasn't stopped all day, but all this mud has just made it even more exciting for the thousands of spectators who have come along.
Staying dry was also a pretty good option.
We've heard some Irish accents and some French accents, and we're like, oh, cool. There's like people from all around the world here in Derby.
Because in the elements, it was a wild ride.
They've been practising on dry, dusty, loose ground, so today's a bit more slippery and a bit more muddy.
Tom Johnson, Southern Cross News.
Yeah, great event, and we'll have the results from Derby later in sport. Our state's future leaders have been honoured at the 2017 Young Achiever Awards. Hundreds gathering at Rest Point Casino to celebrate the work done by Tasmania's youth. Dr Jessica Manuela receiving the top honour. The award capping off a great year for the dentist, who has dedicated her time to improving oral health within Indigenous communities. 7 young Tasmanians recognised throughout the evening. It's the team that helps solve some of Tasmania's biggest crimes. And tonight we take you behind the scenes of Forensic Science Service Tasmania. Inside is where DNA is tested, drugs are analysed and evidence is collated to help bring criminals to justice.
They're not frontline police officers or detectives, but these scientists are trying to find DNA to help convict our criminals.
I always think that the role we play is just adding to the story.
Paul Holloway is one of around 30 people who work at the Newtown site. Each day they assist with everything from murder cases to assaults, burglaries and car thefts. The scientists look for blood, saliva and other bodily fluids. Once found, a DNA profile is developed and compared with those already on the database.
If we get a sample from an item and from a crime, and we get a nice DNA profile, doesn't match anybody, we'll leave it on there. And it could sit there for years, it could sit there forever in theory, but it'll sit there until we get a match to it.
In 2014, a 12-year-old girl was abducted and raped in Latrobe. At the time, no offender was found. Then, 2 years later, following a completely different crime, a match was discovered.
There was a man who exposed himself to a couple of children. The police went and arrested him. They charged him. They took a DNA sample and gave it to us. And that matched this earlier sample taken from the girl's clothing. And it went to court. He pled guilty and he was convicted of the crimes.
Leftover food also helps scientists bring criminals to justice.
We've had a case where some criminals, they were eating some pizza and they left some of that behind during a motor vehicle theft. And we got that, got some DNA off it, and matched the people who were driving the car.
The Forensic Services Hall, not just a place to find DNA.
So what is in this room? What happens here?
So this is the room where we do our drug identification. So Sally here is actually just doing some preliminary or presumptive tests to see with the tablets that have been submitted to us for analysis, what drugs might actually be present within the tablets.
The drugs are scraped into tiny pellets, then chemicals are added. For ecstasy and ice, the liquid changes colour. But if it doesn't...
So with methamphetamine, we would expect an orange colour change. So in that case, it hasn't changed colour, so it suggests that methamphetamine is not present within that powder.
The process proving not everything sold is what dealers claim it is.
Which is why it is so dangerous when children are buying tablets, or anybody's buying tablets, because they don't know what they're getting.
In this room is where blood samples from across the state are bought and analysed to determine if alcohol, drugs or poison are present. Again, chemicals are added, then samples are mixed.
Blood will separate to the bottom layer and then the drugs will be sitting in that top layer there. So then what we can do then is we run it on our instruments and then that will tell us what drugs are in there and generally how much drug is in there as well.
Once we work out what drugs or alcohol or poisons are present in the sample, we then report them in a court report that's then used in a court of law.
Around 70 blood samples are tested on site each week and evidence can be kept for years. Scientists say it's satisfying helping bring people to justice, but sometimes the answers aren't always what police expect.
Sometimes we have a suspect and we have some DNA and we put those together and they don't match each other. And that can be satisfying too, because you can go and say, well look, this person was a suspect, but actually the evidence is saying it's not them.
The small lab helping make a big difference to our world of crime. Monika Dadson, Southern Cross News.
A $50 million development set to be built on Crown land in Hobart is causing outrage within a community. Today, residents hitting the pavement to voice their concerns to local government.
It's a bold plan that's been given the nod of approval by the local council, paving the way for Chinese developers to turn this site into a world-class hospitality training school and hotel. Plans the community say they were not fully consulted about.
And until the development application was lodged, no one in the community knew that there was a second building. So it sort of came as a shock to people, and it's going to create a big barrier to the view that everyone here loves.
It's this piece of land that's set for a 5-storey hospitality and training school that residents are against. They say the scale, size and bulk of the building will be an eyesore.
This is Crown land, public open space, and I think the community felt that this land would always be for the people of Bellerive, not an investment company.
The protesters crashing an official ceremony to celebrate a new parks and recreation site, a desperate plea to local mayor to listen to their concerns and take action. Concerns Lord Mayor Doug Chipman says have been raised too late.
And the whole project was fully advertised. Now, all of that's been through the planning process. There were no appeals to the tribunal against the council's decision, and so the planning permit has been issued.
But there is still hope that the development can be adjusted, with talks taking place with Hunter developers last week.
There has been some discussions with, my understanding is, with Professor Morris Nunn, that there may be some flexibility, there may be some degree by which a change may occur.
Alexandra Sykes, Southern Cross News.
North Launceston has gone 2 from 2 in the TSL, dealing another blow to the struggling Hobart City Demons last night. New playing coach Tom Couch was sidelined prior to the match, but it didn't stop the Northern Bombers running away with a 37-point win. And in today's game, Clarence got on the board with a 33-point victory over the Tigers.
The muddy deck didn't help either side at Blunston Arena early on. After a first-round bye, Clarence found the footy to earn an early lead. Better adapting to these slippery conditions, even a snap over the shoulder wasn't out of the question. Tyler Carter responded at the other end to claw the Tigers within reach. But the Roos chased hard, this effort lifting the side, although not everyone was a fan. A hard physical contest from both sides, players were dumped into the soggy turf at every turn. Despite a Tigers fight back in the third quarter, Clarence were too strong, with 12 different goal kickers contributing to the win. Last night, North Launceston found holes in the Demons' defence, helping full forward Bart McCulloch turn around an early deficit. The forwards sharing the workload, with Tom Bennett chipping in 2, likewise Nathan Jackson, somehow getting a hand here, sealing the 6 points and letting the Demons know all about it. But bad kicking prevented a blowout. The Bombers slotted 1 goal 4 behinds in the third, allowing the Demons to sniff an upset. Josh Williamson ran hard when his turn came, accelerating through the centre and pinpointing Callan Dell in the pocket. The goal sneak choosing the check side to finish the job. But the Bombers were too good, kicking away in the last quarter for a 6-goal win. Coach Tom Couch returns next week. He signals more polish will be needed against stronger sides.
It was a bit of a scrappy match. The skills weren't, terrific tonight from both sides really. I think the weather had something to do with that. But yeah, we were missing a lot of kicks.
We thought we had a real chance at 3/4 time to run over the top of them. Our pressure had been great. We'd had nearly 60 tackles for the first 3 quarters, but obviously you need to play 4 quarters, especially against a quality side that's well coached.
Tom Johnson, Southern Cross News.
The Enduro World Series in Derby came to a dramatic close, with the front runner crashing out on the final stage. Frenchman Adrien Dailly claimed top spot as a result, his first as a senior rider. In the women's, Isabeau Courdurier took out the title. Fabian Coulthard has escaped more havoc on the track at Symonds Plains to take out the final race of the round. The slippery surface sending drivers into the sand and the barricades. Only 3 cars started on slick tyres rather than wets. It worked for Coulthard, who took first place on lap 58, following an unforced error from the race leader. After a series of safety laps, Coulthard delivered the emotional win for his team.
Fabian Coulthard breaks his drought and breaks the drought for Shell V-Power Racing with a masterful victory.
Coulthard now sits in second in the championship points behind Shane van Gisbergen. The Launceston Tornadoes have recorded their second straight victory with an 11-point win over the Melbourne Tigers last night. Taylor Roberts led the way for the Tawns with 31 points in front of another strong crowd at the Elfin Sports Centre. Just 3 points separated the teams at three-quarter time. The home side took full control in the final stanza, piling on 29 points. The win sees the Tornadoes move to 4th on the Southern Conference table.
Good evening. It's been a cloudy day with rain and thunderstorms contracting to the northeast. Hobart reached a top of 16. It was 15 in Launceston, 17 in Burnie and 16 in Devonport. 20 degrees was the state's high at Friendly Beaches. It reached 18 at St Helens, 17 at Lowhead, Strawn and the Islands, 15 at Grove and 10 degrees at Lyowini. Let's take a look at the satellite. There's some middle-level cloud with embedded thunderstorms moving over Victoria and Tasmania with a prefrontal trough and cold front. In the north, severe tropical cyclone Ernie is embedded within the monsoon trough over the Indian Ocean between Christmas Island and Western Australia. Here on the close-up, we can see middle and low-level cloud blanketing the state throughout the day. To tomorrow now, the low has moved to lie northeast of Flinders Island, with a high-pressure ridge extending to the south of the state and a cold front approaching from the southwest. Southeast to southwesterly winds reaching 35 knots about the north early in the day and swells to 3.5 metres in the west and south. There's a gale warning for southerly winds for northeastern coastal waters between Cape Portland and Wineglass Bay and northwestern waters between Sandy Cape and Stanley. And a strong wind warning for all remaining northern waters as well as eastern waters from Wineglass Bay to Tasman Island and in the west between Low Rocky Point and Sandy Cape. Hobart will be partly cloudy tomorrow, a top of 18, 17 for Dover and Ouse. Launceston, mostly cloudy, 20 degrees, a sunny 20 for Devonport also, Scottsdale 20. Sunny and 19 for Burnie, a possible late shower for Strawn, 17, 18 for Stanley. St Helens, a morning shower, 18, 18 for Swansea, Ross, 17. Let's take a look at Tuesday now. Mainly fine in the north with possible showers elsewhere, most likely in the south and east. Wednesday, fine with possible showers about the northwest, northeast and Bass Strait Islands. Fine on Thursday, apart from some showers developing along the west coast later in the day. Around the country tomorrow, sunny conditions for Perth and Brisbane, both 30 degrees. Fine in Sydney with a top of 20, cloud for Adelaide, 20 and showers for Melbourne, 16. And here's a look at the current conditions around the state. That's all the weather I've got for you tonight. Thanks, Rach.
Thanks for that, Britt. Well, that's all your news for now. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week. Good night.